First contact gone wrong. Grand Admiral Vaxar of the Nexarian Empire stood proudly on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, as his sensors detected the approaching human vessels. The readings seemed almost laughable. Their ships were barely a quarter the size of his smallest cruiser. After centuries of unchallenged dominance in this sector of the galaxy, the Nexarians had grown accustomed to being the undisputed masters of space warfare. "These humans are either very brave or very foolish," Vaxar remarked to his bridge crew, his 4 eyes narrowing in contempt. The massive viewscreen showed the human fleet, 12 small vessels arranged in a defensive formation. Their design was utilitarian, lacking the graceful spires and ornate architecture that marked Nexarian warships as symbols of their civilization's superiority. First contact protocol dictated that Vaxar should attempt peaceful communication, but the Grand Admiral had other plans. The Nexarian Empire had not grown to span 300 star systems by being diplomatic. They had achieved their dominion through overwhelming force and the subjugation of lesser species. "Open a channel to their flagship," Vaxar ordered, adjusting his ceremonial armor for maximum dramatic effect. The humans needed to understand their place in the galactic hierarchy. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the human female in a simple black uniform. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force maintained a neutral expression as she faced the alien commander. "This is restricted space," Vaxar declared, his translator converting his complex harmonics into basic human speech. "Your species is unknown to us, but your primitive vessels indicate you are far beneath our technological level. Surrender now, and we will be merciful in your subjugation." Captain Chen's response was measured but firm. "We are representatives of the United Earth Government. We claim no territory beyond our solar system, but we will defend ourselves if threatened." Vaxar's secondary hearts pulsed with amusement. These humans didn't even have a multi-system empire. Their technological advancement must be truly pathetic. "Your bravery is noted, but misplaced. Observe the might of a true spacefaring civilization." He gestured to his weapons officer, and the Eternal Dawn's primary weapon banks hummed to life. The massive dreadnought, nearly 5 kilometers in length, began charging its main particle cannon, a weapon capable of reducing a small moon to rubble. "This is your final warning," Chen stated, her voice carrying an edge that Vaxar dismissed as desperation. "We have no wish for conflict, but we are prepared to defend ourselves." "Such spirit from such an insignificant species," Vaxar mocked. "Perhaps we will preserve some of you as curiosities in our menageries. Fire a warning shot. Destroy their smallest vessel." The particle beam lanced out across space, a brilliant purple streak of destructive energy that should have vaporized its target instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ship, no larger than an Nexarian pleasure yacht, simply wasn't there when the beam arrived. It had moved with impossible speed, the likes of which Vaxar had never witnessed in his 3 centuries of naval command. "Interesting weapon system," Chen commented, her earlier neutrality replaced with something that made Vaxar's spine ridges tingle uneasily. Was that amusement in her voice? Our turn. What happened next would be debated in Nexarian military academies for generations to come. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, their formation dissolving into a dance of deadly precision. They accelerated at speeds that should have turned their crews to paste, banking and weaving through space with the agility of fighter craft, despite their cruiser size. "Impossible," Vaxar's tactical officer exclaimed. "Their acceleration exceeds anything in our database. Their hulls should be tearing apart under those G-forces." Before Vaxar could process this violation of his understanding of physics, the humans demonstrated that their mastery of movement was merely the beginning of their surprises. Each vessel suddenly projected multiple sensor signatures, creating a phantom fleet that overwhelmed the Nexarian targeting systems. "Full barrage," Vaxar ordered, his composure cracking. "Destroy them all." The space between the fleets lit up with Nexarian weaponry, enough firepower to level a continent. But the humans had only begun to reveal their capabilities. Their ship's outer hulls suddenly shifted, sections rotating and reconfiguring in ways that defied conventional engineering. What had appeared to be simple armor plating transformed into an array of point defense systems that intercepted incoming fire with pinpoint accuracy. The first part of the battle lasted less than 3 minutes, but for Vaxar, it felt like an eternity. His mighty fleet, the pride of the Nexarian Empire, couldn't land a single decisive hit on vessels he had dismissed as primitive only moments before. As his crew stared in disbelief at their tactical displays, Captain Chen's voice came through once more. "Now that we've demonstrated our defensive capabilities, perhaps you'd like to reconsider your position on peaceful dialogue." Vaxar's mandibles clicked in agitation. His pride warred with his tactical training, but before he could respond, his sensor officer's cry of alarm changed everything. "Grand Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures. The human ships, they're deploying something." The small human vessels were indeed transforming again, but this time they revealed weapon ports that had been completely invisible to Nexarian scanners. The scale of power emanating from these weapons made Vaxar's primary heart stop momentarily. As the first part of this encounter drew to a close, Grand Admiral Vaxar realized with dawning horror that he had made a catastrophic mistake. These humans weren't primitive at all. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to mask their true capabilities behind a facade of simplicity. And now, his arrogance had pulled the trigger on what might become the biggest military disaster in Nexarian history. The lights on his bridge dimmed as the human weapons reached full charge, and Vaxar understood that everything he thought he knew about warfare was about to change forever. The art of deception. The weapon ports on the human vessels didn't fire immediately. Instead, they emitted a complex series of energy patterns that made Vaxar's scientific officer gasp in recognition. "Grand Admiral, they're using quantum entanglement technology. But the energy signature is unlike anything in our records. It's orders of magnitude more sophisticated than our best theoretical models." Captain Chen's image reappeared on the command screen, but this time her uniform had changed. Gone was the simple black garment, replaced by an advanced suit that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "I believe now would be a good time for a proper introduction," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "What you're seeing is just a fraction of Earth's defensive capabilities," Chen continued. "Those primitive ships you so readily dismissed, they're our diplomatic vessels designed specifically for first contact scenarios. We believe in giving potential allies, or adversaries, a chance to show their true nature before revealing ours." Vaxar's tactical displays were going haywire. The quantum fields emanating from the human ships were doing something impossible. They were altering the very fabric of local spacetime. The small fleet that had seemed so insignificant moments ago was now the center of a complex web of spatial distortions. "Impossible," Vaxar whispered. "No species could hide such capabilities. Our intelligence networks spanned the galaxy. We would have known. Would you?" Chen's smile was razor-sharp. "Your empire's greatest weakness is its certainty. You see what you expect to see. When you encountered our ships, you saw what we wanted you to see. Simple, utilitarian vessels that posed no threat to your mighty empire." As if to emphasize her point, the human ships began another transformation. Their hulls rippled like water, and suddenly they were different vessels entirely. Where there had been basic geometric shapes, there were now elegant machines that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The quantum entanglement field had been a key. Unlocking what appeared to be some kind of advanced cloaking technology, it went beyond mere visual concealment. "Our true ships," Chen explained, "exist in a state of quantum superposition. What you saw before was just one possible configuration, the one most likely to trigger your empire's particular brand of arrogance." The scientific implications alone were staggering. The humans hadn't just mastered spaceflight. They had fundamentally altered their relationship with physical reality. Their ships weren't just vessels. They were expressions of scientific principles that the Nexarian Empire had barely begun to theorize about. "The weapons you detected earlier," Chen continued, almost conversationally. "They're not weapons at all. They're multi-dimensional probability anchors. We don't need to destroy your ships. We can simply shift them into a probability state where they never existed in the first place." Vaxar's crew was silent, their earlier confidence replaced by a bone-deep terror of what they were witnessing. The humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them. They had been playing an entirely different game from the start. "Your empire prides itself on its technological superiority," Chen said, her tone now carrying a hint of steel. "But true advancement isn't measured in the size of your ships or the power of your weapons. It's measured in the wisdom to know when not to use them." The quantum fields surrounding the human ships pulsed, and suddenly new vessels began appearing, emerging from what seemed to be alternate dimensions of spacetime. Each one was different, yet they all shared the same impossible grace, the same fundamental rejection of what the Nexarians had thought possible. "This is a demonstration, Grand Admiral," Chen declared. "A small one, by our standards. Your empire has expanded unchecked for centuries, believing itself the pinnacle of civilization. Today, that changes. The question is, will it change through understanding or through demonstration?" As Vaxar watched, paralyzed by the scale of his miscalculation, he realized that the humans hadn't just been hiding their technological capabilities. They had been hiding an entire civilization that made the Nexarian Empire look like children playing with toys. The primitive vessels had been a test, one his empire had catastrophically failed. The quantum fields continued to pulse, and with each wave, more human ships emerged from their dimensional pockets. Not dozens, but hundreds. Each one represented a level of technology that shattered Vaxar's understanding of what was possible. And still, Captain Chen waited patiently for his response, her expression suggesting that this display of power was merely the beginning of what humanity could bring to bear. Tables turned. Vaxar's response never came. Instead, a new voice cut through the command channel, one that made Captain Chen's expression shift from controlled confidence to respectful attention. "This is Admiral Elizabeth Santos of the Earth Defense Force Strategic Command," the voice announced. The view screen split to show an older human female, her dark eyes carrying the weight of centuries despite her species' short lifespan. "Captain Chen's battle group has demonstrated a fraction of our capabilities. Now, let me show you why your empire's expansion ends today." The space around the Nexarian fleet suddenly lit up with countless points of light, quantum signatures that Vaxar's sensors couldn't even begin to process. The humans hadn't just hidden their ships, they had concealed entire battle fleets in dimensional pockets throughout the sector. "Your empire has colonized 300 systems," Admiral Santos continued. "At this exact moment, human forces are emerging in every single one of them. Your orbital defenses, your planetary shields, your automated response systems, they're all being neutralized simultaneously." Vaxar's communications officer confirmed the impossible truth. Emergency signals were flooding in from across Nexarian space. The humans had somehow bypassed every defense, every precaution, every failsafe that generations of Nexarian military engineering had created. "This isn't an invasion," Santos explained, her voice carrying no hint of malice, only resolute determination. "This is a demonstration of why your empire's philosophy of might makes right is fundamentally flawed. True power isn't about the ability to destroy. It's about the wisdom to shape reality itself." As if to emphasize her point, the human ships began manipulating space-time in ways that defied comprehension. Nexarian weapons fire simply ceased to exist mid-trajectory, caught in probability fields that rewrote their very existence. When Vaxar ordered his fleet to retreat, they discovered that their faster-than-light drives had been rendered inert by localized changes to the laws of physics themselves. "Your civilization has achieved remarkable things," Santos acknowledged, "but you've built your empire on a foundation of fear and domination. We've spent centuries watching, learning, understanding not just your technology, but your psychology. Your need to demonstrate superiority made you predictable. The tactical displays showed more human ships arriving, but these were different. They were enormous constructs that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, their structures folding in on themselves in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. These, Santos said, gesturing to the impossible ships, are our actual warships. We haven't built them in generations. We haven't needed to. They're maintained as reminders of a path we chose not to take, the path your empire is currently on. A new set of readings made Vaxar's scientific officer collapse in shock. The massive human vessels weren't just warships. They were mobile stellar engineering platforms. Each one contained enough energy to reignite dead stars or extinguish living ones. We could have ended your empire the moment we detected it, Santos continued. Instead, we studied you, hoping you would evolve beyond your current state naturally. Today's demonstration is our way of helping that evolution along. The human admiral's expression softened slightly. Your empire stands at a crossroads, Grand Admiral Vaxar. The weapons you see before you will never be used, unless you force our hand. Instead, we offer you a choice. Continue down your current path and face extinction, or join us in understanding the true nature of civilization. As Vaxar struggled to process the magnitude of the situation, his sensors detected yet another impossible phenomenon. The human ships were creating stable wormholes, not for travel, but for observation. Through these windows in spacetime, he could see countless other civilizations, some so advanced they made even humanity's displays seem primitive. Welcome, Santos said, to the actual galactic community, the one your empire wasn't ready to join until now. The Nexarian Empire isn't the pinnacle of evolution. You're merely at the beginning of understanding what's possible. The question is, are you ready to learn? The price of pride. The next 12 hours aboard the Eternal Dawn passed in a blur of emergency meetings, frantic communications with the Nexarian High Command, and a steady stream of reports confirming humanity's total control over Nexarian space. Vaxar had watched his empire's carefully constructed hierarchy of power crumble in less than a day. The Eternal Council demands answers, his political officer, Nexar, reported grimly. The holographic projections showed the chaos unfolding across Nexarian systems. Not a single shot had been fired, yet their civilization was in upheaval. How did we miss this? How could our intelligence fail so completely? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sylvia Martinez, a human xenoanthropologist, had been permitted to board the Eternal Dawn as part of the ongoing negotiations. Her presence was both a courtesy and a reminder of humanity's overwhelming advantage. Your intelligence didn't fail, Martinez explained, studying the Nexarian historical records displayed on the bridge's auxiliary screens. You saw exactly what you were capable of seeing. Your civilization's belief in its own superiority created a perceptual blind spot that we carefully maintained. She gestured, and the air before them filled with a complex web of interconnected data points. For the past century, we've been seeding your scientific community with fragments of advanced theories, always presented as speculative fiction or theoretical abstractions. Your scientists dismissed them because they contradicted your established understanding of physics. Vaxar remembered some of those papers. They had been laughed out of academic circles, their authors often retiring in disgrace. Those were your people. No, Martinez smiled. They were your own scientists who dared to think beyond your empire's assumptions. We simply ensured their work survived, knowing it would be important later. Today, those dismissed theories are suddenly the most read scientific papers in your network. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just outmaneuvered them militarily. They had shaped the very development of Nexarian scientific thought, creating a foundation for what was to come. Across the empire, the response to humanity's revelation varied dramatically. Some worlds called for immediate military action, unable to accept their civilization's secondary status. Others fell into panic, their populations struggling with the knowledge that they were no longer among the galaxy's elite species. But in universities, research centers, and scientific institutions, a different reaction was taking hold. The human demonstrations had proven that their most radical theories were not only possible but had been achieved and surpassed. Centuries of scientific doctrine were being rewritten in real time. Your civilization stands at a crucial juncture, Martins continued. The next few days will determine whether the Nexarian Empire becomes a participant in galactic civilization or remains isolated in its outdated beliefs. As if to punctuate her point, new readings appeared on the Eternal Dawn sensors. The massive human engineering ships were beginning something unprecedented. They were stabilizing the dying star at the heart of the Nexarian home system, a problem that had plagued their scientists for generations. Consider it a gesture of good faith, Martinez explained. Your son's deterioration would have led to a system-wide evacuation within the next century. Now, it will burn stable for another 1,000,000 years. Vaxar watched as the impossible became reality before his eyes. The humans weren't just demonstrating power, they were offering a glimpse of what cooperation could achieve. His empire's finest minds had struggled with their son's decay for centuries, and humanity had solved it as casually as one might fix a malfunctioning door. The Eternal Council is reconvening, Nexar announced, his voice hushed. They're voting on whether to accept humanity's offer of guidance. The political officers' scales had lost their usual luster, a sign of extreme stress in their species. Grand Admiral, they're requesting your input. Your experience with the humans. It could sway the decision. Vaxar studied the tactical displays one last time. The human ships hung in formation, their very existence a challenge to everything he had believed about his civilization's place in the universe. His next words would help shape the future of his entire species, a new galactic order. 3 months after humanity's revelation, the Nexarian capital world of eternal grace hosted an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from dozens of advanced civilizations had arrived through methods that defied traditional physics, some simply stepping through tears in reality, others emerging from beams of pure thought. Vaxar stood at the podium of the Great Assembly, his ceremonial armor replaced with the simple robes of a student. The past months had transformed him from a military commander into something far more important, a bridge between his people's past and their potential future. Fellow Nexarians, he began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. 3 months ago, I stood on the bridge of our mightiest warship, certain of our supremacy. Today, I stand before you as living proof that the greatest power lies not in weapons or ships, but in the ability to admit when we are wrong. The assembly chamber itself was a testament to the changes sweeping through Nexarian society. Human engineers, working alongside their most gifted architects, had helped renovate it into a structure that existed partially in multiple dimensions. It was a physical metaphor for their civilization's expanding perspective. Humanity could have conquered us, Vaxar continued. Instead, they chose to teach us. The quantum technology they shared has already revolutionized our understanding of the universe. But more importantly, they showed us that true civilization isn't measured by its capacity for dominance, but by its wisdom in choosing not to dominate. Dr. Martinez sat in the audience alongside Admiral Santos, both wearing expressions of quiet satisfaction. The transition hadn't been entirely smooth. Several Nexarian colony worlds had initially refused to accept the new reality. But when their own scientists began verifying and building upon the human-provided technologies, resistance had gradually given way to curiosity. Today, we take our first official steps into the greater galactic community, Vaxar announced. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as students eager to learn. Our empire will be transformed into something new. A civilization dedicated not to expansion through force, but to expansion through understanding. The chamber's quantum fields rippled as representatives from various advanced species nodded in approval. Some of them had histories stretching back millions of years, making both humanity and the Nexarians seem young by comparison. Yet they treated both species as equals, recognizing potential rather than just achievement. Admiral Santos stepped forward to stand beside Vaxar. The Nexarian response to our revelation has exceeded our hopes, she addressed the assembly. In 3 months, they've begun dismantling centuries of militant expansion and redirecting those resources toward scientific and cultural advancement. It's unprecedented in our records of civilizational development. The admiral gestured, and the chamber filled with holographic representations of the changes already underway. Nexarian warships were being converted into research vessels and exploration craft. Military academies had been transformed into centers of scientific learning. The empire that had once prided itself on its capacity for war was reinventing itself as a beacon of knowledge. But perhaps most importantly, Santos continued, the Nexarians have begun reaching out to the species they once dominated, not to apologize, though that too is happening, but to learn from them. They're discovering that every civilization, no matter how seemingly primitive, has something unique to teach. Vaxer felt a profound sense of pride, not in military might or territorial control, but in his people's capacity for change. The humans had gambled that beneath the Nexarian Empire's militant exterior lay a civilization capable of growth and transformation. That gamble had paid off beyond anyone's expectations. As we move forward, Vaxer concluded, we carry with us an important lesson. The universe is not a hierarchy to be climbed, but a web of connections to be understood. Our former pride nearly cost us our future. Our new humility has opened doors we never knew existed. The assembly chamber erupted in approval, the very fabric of space-time resonating with the combined consciousness of dozens of advanced civilizations. As Vaxer looked out over the gathering, he couldn't help but smile at the irony. His empire had spent centuries seeking to prove its superiority, only to find its true greatness in accepting its own limitations. The human ships still orbited eternal grace, but now they were joined by vessels from across the galaxy. Each one represented a different path to advancement, a unique perspective on the nature of existence. And in their diversity lay the true strength of civilization, not the power to conquer, but the wisdom to learn from every encounter, every mistake, and every revelation that the universe had to offer. The age of the Nexarian Empire had ended. The age of understanding had begun.